Now remember, son, winter is coming, and you need to prepare yourself.
It says here that winter has always come to pass, so it's now spring, so... See ya!
What?
My name is Daidarius, and welcome to the view for Game of Thrones. So Game of Thrones, in case you have lived under a rock the past, 10 years, is one of the absolute hugest TV series of all time, and have just wrapped, not just, but had recently wrapped up its 8-series run. So I want to talk about this. I'm going to keep things very vague in case you haven't seen this series and you're thinking about wanting to watch it. So here goes. There's this land called Westeros where winter is coming. What does that mean? You have to watch the series to find out. But on the list, there are 7 kingdoms who are under one crown, where this king rules them all. He is friend with Boromir, Ned Stark, and he wants him to come to the capital to help him do, king business. In the meantime, all these kingdoms, they don't really like each other, and everyone wants to sit on the Iron Throne. It is this thing you have probably seen 100 times on the internet. Whoever sits on this and bears the crown rules the 7 kingdoms. In the meanwhile, over at the east, in another country, this girl called Daidarius, she is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, because she is a Targaryen, and Targaryen used to rule before, the current king did. So she wants to rise an army and then go to Westeros and then beat their asses and take over, the whole kingdom. While all of that is happening, you have some pretty nasty dudes to the north who's called White Walkers, who wants to... I don't know what they want, but it's not going to be pleasant for mankind, let's just say that. So we want to do something about those guys, but we don't know how to do it, but we want to do something. And while all that is happening, you find out there are some incidents happening in the kingdom. Someone is backstabbing other people, and then... internal wars happening between these 7 kingdoms, and then a lot of shit happens. It is very, very, very hard to summarize the whole Game of Thrones series, because there's a lot of shit going on. But nonetheless, we find all of this confused, then just remember the most of it just happened in the first fucking episode. Jesus. But nonetheless, this series is about a lot of intrigue and political aspects and planning and trying to backstab your enemies without them knowing it is you that's doing it. Mixed in with some exceptional great set designs, storytelling, pacing, characters, mythos, and just everything you want. All cooked down to just 8 seasons. So now that that terrible job of trying to summarize the plot of Game of Thrones is done, then let's jump into what I like about this series. First of all, the acting. The acting is actually great. It is better than most acting you see on a lot of television series. Everyone tries to bring their A-game, especially considering that most of them was kinda unknown in the beginning. We all know Sean Bean, and there are also other characters in here that we all know beforehand, but there's still a lot of newcomers in here, and they try to prove their worth against these veterans, so you get exceptional well acting for the most part. Then there's the set design. The set design is almost like out of a movie. It's hard to describe. Yes, you can kind of see in the beginning seasons that they didn't have the great budget that they ended up having in the later seasons, but the set design is still very great, kind of big in scope, and also very realistic. It goes down to the set designs, the costumes, just everything is top notch. Then you have the story. The story is, for the first 4.5 seasons, straight out of George Martin's novels. Apparently he's a great writer. I haven't read any of his books yet. I want to, save that for when his 6th and then 7th final book in the series comes out, so I can just binge reading all of it just from start to finish. But on this, he understands how to create this complicated, very, very, very complicated plot and actually make it work and make it not easy to follow, but just make you able to follow along with it. And for the first 4 seasons, this series is masterful adapting this plot to the small screen, not the big screen, but the small screen, which means you will get one of TV's absolute smartest mind ever, which is Tyrion Lannister. Trust me, he might be a fucking douchebag in the beginning of this series. But just halfway through the first season, him taking you over to his side. I mean, trust me, he's fucking awesome. And he's not the only awesome character in this show. This show is filled to the brim with awesome characters. I'm not going to go through everyone because there's too many. But I'm going to take one character, which is Jaime Lannister, played by Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. He is one of the absolute biggest douchebags ever put on screen in the first couple of seasons, actually. And then he just undergo one of the best character arcs ever when he tries to actually redeem himself. I mean, it is magnificent storytelling. And then later in the season, when you actually have a more solid budget, you also see one of the absolute most impressive CGI work on a television series. I mean, most of us have seen some shots or images of the dragons that comes later on. Is yes, this series has dragons. Just dragons alone should be enough to convince you that you need to watch this. But it's not just the dragons, just everything. The way they expand cities and vast landscape and everything. It's just so very impressive done that you almost think that this is actually a movie. It is movie quality for the most part. That is how well done this series actually is. Now I must warn you, even though there are a lot of battle in this series, in the beginning, in the first few seasons, there wasn't really a budget to show that many fights, so a lot of the big battles are actually just skipped and you just see the aftermath for the battle. Just the leading up to, and then we cut to the aftermath. There will be a lot of battle later on. I will get to that in my cons section actually, but you just need to be aware that you won't see a lot of battle in this series in the beginning 4 seasons. However, those you do see, it's just art. It's just fucking art. Speaking of fucking, this is not a show for the kids. You will see a lot of gore. I mean, gore galore. And also you will see a lot of nudity and swearing. And let's just say, this is not a show you want to watch with your parents. I'm just warning you, it's gonna get awkward. So you have amazing set designs, you have amazing cinematography, storytelling, characters, CGI, deep lore, extremely complicated but still well-told plot. So why do people bitch about this series? Well, as I said before, I have not yet read The Song of Ice and Fire. And the reason for that is that George Martin is not yet finished with the books, which means that this series has kind of gone its own direction to try and, fill in the blanks of what this series should have ended with the few information that George Martin actually gave to the series directors. And since there's only one George Martin, then the quality unfortunately just nosedive. When you get past the 4th season, they actually diverge so much for the source material that is only part of season 5 and part of season 6 that is kind of entertaining and fulfilling, and everything else is just, it's not good. So let's talk about the things I didn't like about this series. First of all the intelligent dialogue, the scheming, characters, they gotta get thrown pretty quickly out the window because apparently these series creators and screenwriters, they don't know how to create these intelligent characters, the way they think, the way they speak, the way they scheme, and they're planning so that they may end up on top. You don't really see that much after season 4. There's still a bit of it in there because there are 5 books, and they're still adapting the 5th book in season 5 and kind of season 6. No, season 5 actually only. And by that time they have diverged so much for the books. So it's pretty much just rock and roll from here on out. Since we don't have so much scheming and intelligent plots afterwards, that means we get a lot of more fights. Now fights can be entertaining to watch, but you've just tried to fill out all the intelligent plots, characters, and just well thought out themes for the book. Just use fights instead, then you're gonna end up with a pretty hollow show. And unfortunately, that is actually what happens. So you get more and more fights and you get less and less content. And even when you get to the final season, the fights is actually just not even interesting. The last great fight we got was the Battle of the Bastards that you get in season 6, and also kind of a little battle in season 7 where some guys are trying to fight a dragon. Well, that's part of the fight, but yeah, you know what fight I'm talking about when you get to season 7. Oh, there's also something about the Sept. There's this giant building in the capital of Westeros. Something happens to that in season 6, and I thought personally that it was pretty fucking awesome. Even though I know why they did it, I thought it was so great. It was a very great constructed scene. So you get a lot of more fights, you get a lot of more dragons and CGI because the budgets went sky high because everyone loved this show. But unfortunately, which is the second gripe I have with this series, is that yes, characters and plot and everything takes a nosedive. But all these great plot points that this series is building up to. There is a hidden Targaryen. There is the White Walkers. There is who's going to sit on the Iron Throne. There is some character redemption, some character arcs, some future fights and everything that's just going to get thrown out the window because this series apparently needs to end extremely quickly all of a sudden. Which means that when you get to the final episode of this series, you will feel unsatisfied because nothing feels earned, unfortunately. I mean, hell, you have probably heard everyone on the internet bitching about how disappointed they are in season 7 and 8 for Game of Thrones. Let me just say, it is not how the series ended that is the worst part. It is how it got there. It tries to do so much in so little time and yet waste so much time doing nothing. Does this mean that you shouldn't watch Game of Thrones? Hell no. It is still a freaking awesome series, but it just slowly takes a nosedive after season 4. Season 5 is still good, in my personal opinion. Then you have season 6 with Battle of the Bastards, one of the greatest battles in the whole show. And then after that, you just kind of stick with it so you get closure to these characters that you have come to love. Oh, which by the way, don't get too attached to most of these characters because a lot of them is going to get killed off. I'm just saying, you'll get hurt. And again, season 7, season 8 is not boring season. You don't feel like you're wasting your time. You might just feel like you are kind of betrayed, but it is still great cinematography, great set designs, and impressive CGI. Unfortunately, that is not enough to make a show great, but I think it's still worth watching. So I will say that Game of Thrones, you should watch it in cinema. Entertainment guaranteed. Even though you can't watch this in cinema, I mean, it's series on HBO, but you get the drift. If I was only reviewing the first 4 seasons, then this will be an epic masterpiece. But the later season just kind of drags it down. But I think that you haven't seen this show, you should give it a try. You will find a lot of things in this show to appreciate. Especially Tyrion Lannister. Just sitting. So, Game of Thrones, have you seen it? What did you think about it? What is your favorites and least favorite moments from this show? I think personally my favorite moment might be the wall episode in season 3. It was just too amazing. The first time I saw that, I just thought, is this actually gonna be the whole episode? Awesome. My least favorite is just episode 3 in season 8. I'm not gonna spoil what happens. Just the resolution to that episode had made me very angry. But only because I became so passionate with this show. So, whatever you think, comment below with your thoughts. And as always, until I see you in the next video, remember to stay awesome. Bye! Dun 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 dun. Ba 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 ba.